Why hello there everyone, and welcome to more D&D Horror Story Cringe presented by Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about a player for whom consent is a foreign concept. A story about a player losing their crap after an NPC's motives are revealed, and much more. But first, Lucky, the like and comment kitty, would like a word. Thanks, Lucky. But with that said, let's get into these stories. Killing Innocents, Biting the Hand That Feeds, and Marital Grapes by Reddit user Silas Tyler. Got another one for you. This was years ago, and I had a nerdy-ass boss with a nerdy-ass wife a few jobs ago that were way into everything geeky except tabletop RPGs. So I offered to teach them the game of Pathfinder. Wifey was on board immediately, and Boss Man was skeptical since his only RPG experience was World of Warcraft. I ran a one-shot with pre-gens to teach them the gist, and they fell in love immediately. 2 weeks later, I'm helping them roll their own characters. These people ended up moving away, and it's a good thing. Seeing what Boss Man has inside of him was an eye-opening experience, and I may not have voluntarily lost his number had it not been for seeing him play. Right off the rip, I explain alignments, and both seem to understand. I tell them that this is an anything but evil campaign, and of course, Boss Man zeroes in on chaotic neutral. Not bad yet. I mean, plenty of people can play chaotic neutral and don't act like asshats. But I got a bad feeling anyway. He of course immediately tries to be as evil as possible, beyond your bog standard Murderhobo stuff. Every session, he tries to kill every quest giver. Not every NPC, mind you. Just once he knows an NPC is supposed to have a role beyond filling out the roster of funny voices I like to do, he targets them. The other players hate this of course, but they play it cool because Boss Man is new. He starts asking every female NPC to sleep with him. When I say no in character, he starts rolling d20s.
I got a 17. That means you have to have sex with me.
I tell him it doesn't work that way. He gets upset, but accepts this the first few times. After that, he starts saying that he's going to kill NPCs who refuse him. The party doesn't want to deal with the town guards, trying him for murder and turning the adventure into a series of consequences for his actions. So Wifey bullies him into taking it back when he starts rolling attacks against sleeping women in the tavern. Later, he starts waiting until he is alone with a female NPC and kills them discreetly against the objections of his wife. I tell him that this is gross and that it needs to stop, but I can't do much beyond light scolding since I have to answer to this dipshit on Monday morning. The last straw was a cursed artifact that compels him to spill blood to satiate a vampiric spirit. I wanted his wife's character to wear it for thematic reasons, but she was afraid when encountering it and left it alone, and he decided that he wanted it instead. I didn't want to encourage him to do more murder, but why the hell not? They were moving soon. What did it matter at this point? The way it worked was a will save in the middle of the night. If he failed, the artifact made him get out of bed. If he failed a second time, he had to roll a touch attack against the nearest sapient creature to draw some blood. Boss Man failed the first, but passed the second. It meant he was supposed to come to his senses and not follow through with the attack. Instead, what he did was tell me that while he was in the room with Wifey's character, that he wanted to have sex with her. She immediately objected, and he retorts that she doesn't know he's there, that she's asleep. Needless to say, I didn't allow it. I had her roll a DC 5 perception check to wake her ass up, so we didn't have to break character. Not like that would have mattered, but still. She slaps him in person and tells him that that was unacceptable. Chillingly, he doesn't even get angry that he didn't get his way. He looks us both in the eye and says,
"She's my wife. What's the problem?"
With genuine confusion, like a kid wondering why the sky chose to be blue of all things. It's then that I had to explain to my own boss a grown man, that ladies do not like to be touched without their consent, especially when it involves the contents of their undies. Even if you marry them, you are not entitled to their bodies, even in fantasy. And he reacts like I've just told him that Santa isn't real. We didn't play anymore after that. I was talking to wifey at a function sometime later, and the year of her birth came up. I realized, for the first time, how much younger than me and Bossman she was. I start doing math, remembering how long he had said that they were together. I asked him at work the next day to confirm the dates for my curiosity, and he informs me with a straight face that he groomed her as a kid and that they had a physical relationship since she was 13. Yuck, right? His lack of boundaries suddenly makes sense, and I think about her sometimes all these years later. I hope she's doing okay, as I can't imagine having that for a spouse. Holy creepy Murderhobo Batman. First, how did Bossman think that this was a good idea to just try and outright kill NPCs? Not NPCs in general, but the ones that the game rely on to give quest hooks. Then the standard that guy stuff of trying to sleep with every female NPC in the game comes up, of course. And when OP decided to try to shut that down in game, Bossman decides to go all murderous incel on them. Thankfully, OP finally decided to just flat out tell him to stop. Though I can understand his apprehension to do so, seeing as he was his boss. Then there's the whole thing with Bossman's wife's character. Just the fact that Bossman seemed legit surprised at the concept of consent, even in marriage, is unsettling. Thankfully, it seems like wifey doesn't put up with that kind of crap, as she slapped him when he had the thought of it. I don't blame OP for not wanting to talk to Bossman again, especially after he flat out told OP that he groomed his wife at the age of 13. That's just, ugh. Let's move on. Player hated how I ruined an NPC I had introduced. By Reddit user, Baffa the Clown. I have been DMing for a group of 4 for a few months now. In their campaign, they had to choose between a prince and a princess that were fighting for the throne. For some reason, they never seemed to get that the princess was supposed to be evil, even though she very clearly was. They even helped her do things that were wrong, like planting false evidence against the prince, watching her kill prisoners after questioning them, and even not getting the hint of the power that she was using, which I had only previously linked to the Lich who was supposed to be the big bad for the campaign. The princess had her knights attack them on the order of the Lich, where I revealed her to be his warlock. 3 of the players seemed to be blown away by the reveal, even though I had been trying really hard to show them that she wasn't good from the start. The 4th player didn't like it one bit, and said that I ruined a strong female character by making her a guy's minion. Instead of playing, she started arguing about this and how I should have had the prince be evil. We kept arguing back and forth, with the others supporting my side, and I started to point out the hints that I had laid out for them and told her that if she had a problem with my story, she could leave. And she did. The reveal and the story I had been working towards for weeks basically got ruined. Well, first, with all the hints that the DM was giving out, how did the players not see that coming? From planting false evidence, and even killing prisoners in front of them, I feel like it was pretty obvious, and that OP basically telegraphed that pretty clearly. Then, for the one player to lose their crap over it and leave the campaign is a bit of an overreaction in my opinion. Though I would tell OP that it was probably good that she left of her own volition, as if that was enough to enrage her, I imagine things may have gotten much worse down the line. Let's move on. I Need to Heal by Reddit user CharCharBoy. I want to air out my grievances with a dungeon master that I no longer speak to. I need to preface this by saying, the point of this post is to get brand new eyes on what my friend and I experienced in about 3+ years of playing D&D, a homebrew, with the same DM. I want to know what uninvolved people think of this. I want to know that I'm not crazy, or my friend's not crazy. Just assurance that this was effed. If you are the DM, please go away. This isn't for you. Here's a list of all the issues I still think and have trauma about. Having anxiety before sessions would occur, to the point that I wished it would be cancelled for that day. I felt that the DM would either have a problem of some kind, or someone else would have a problem, and it would devolve into arguments or dead silence for extended periods. I did not want to flip a coin to see how my emotional state would be that night. Being too agreeable with the DM's choices. There wasn't much wiggle room when it came to what happened metatextually with the campaign and such. If you had a problem, it would either be word spaghettied away, you would be made to think that the problem was on you, or that's just how things are going to be done. Sure, you could talk about it with them, but if it was something that they were even slightly set on, there was nothing you could do. So you just agree with what they wanted, and that would pass the conversation smoothly along, rather than having a big discussion about it that would end up with nothing changed. The prior session forced conversations. I agree that you should be engaged with D&D stuff, but if this is the only time during the week that you set aside to be with your friends, you should be allowed to talk about whatever you want with them, rather than solely D&D related topics.
Talk about D&D and D&D related topics,
is what was said. The 2 Epstein characters, with the second being a love interest for my friend's character. By Epstein, it was literal. There was an enemy NPC who was a fantasized version of Jeffrey Epstein. They had an island where they brought people into sex slavery. My friend's character's backstory involved, obscurely, being a victim of bad things. The Epstein character was made by the DM to fill in the gaps, I think, rather than leaving it ambiguous. The second Epstein character came about after the first one died, a sort of readmission from the grave, so to speak. Yes, we went to the island, to kill him, obviously. And no, it was not pleasant. I think there was a child involved at some point, but I don't want to think about it. The scat lolly scene. No amount of context will redeem it.
Dude, what the hell?
Talking to every NPC with a hint of DM favor. Every NPC who had a name was instantly above me on the pecking list. If they weren't, it was because we killed them and they were dead. When I brought up the issue of NPC importance, the response was,
"Does it matter?"
Being told that railroading is good. Every supporting party NPC being infinitely cooler. It didn't matter what you did or what you had. Someone will always be cooler than you just by existing and perceived having better things than you. This isn't some petty stuff. I mean, this was the most extreme way possible. For example, in one campaign, I had an ability to steal small stats from every person in the area, with the caveat that it doesn't work on enemies that also had the transform ability associated with this. Every enemy we were put against after I got this ability had the transform caveat, so the ability did nothing. Their transform ability, however, did do something. Oh, it sure did something. And much, much more. The DM NPC favorite that is unkillable and infinitely stronger. The DM had a favorite character that they used in every single campaign. This character never died for real, and was either one of the strongest characters, and/or made the strongest NPCs stronger. Being hated or lower than the neutral disposition with all party NPCs except one. Be every NPC's excuse for being a lifeless, spineless character who needs to hate on me because I'd be too well off otherwise. Getting nerfed so hard into the ground that 6 feet under was a joke compared to me. My friend was told,
"You need to have the limelight taken away."
Not truly being in control of my character build. Every single time that I was objectified while playing a woman character. Being the woman character in any campaign was a nightmare. The gatekeeping for new players. Fights that were unwinnable. Fights that were never meant to be fought at all. More akin to cutscenes in games. It wasn't because we made a bad choice, or we were out of our league. It was because we were meant to lose because that's what was wanted. Constant, nearly debilitating fear of playing out of character in-game caused me to make my character have unconsensual sex with a child under the pretense that I was a sexual deviant who was turning into a literal monster. Jesus Christ. I mean, all the other stuff was WTF, but this is like the tip of cringe mountain. This happened in the first campaign that I was involved with. The only other context is, I was given a choice to either become a monster, or quote-unquote become a monster, due to the fallen angel route that I was in with the character. The fear came from the DM, quote-unquote taking away max HP, from people who broke the rules. No meta, play your character, etc. He stopped doing that after we collectively told him multiple times that we didn't like that, and had a discussion about it. This isn't everything. I don't think it'll ever be everything without getting super personal. If anyone has any follow-up questions, or morbid curiosity, I'll try to answer. I did have plenty of good times as well, otherwise I would have stopped a long time ago. And this didn't all happen at once. It was over time, but it just stacked up. All I want to do is be able to play D&D again, but I feel like I can't because in order to move on, I need to mentally recover, but I don't know how. I think the worst part is, if they saw this, they would try really hard to explain away most of it. Holy God, that was one hell of a list. After all that, it's no wonder OP doesn't play with that DM anymore. Though I would tell OP to not let this experience with one god-awful DM ruin this hobby completely for him. I mean, I've read some stories about horrible DMs, and this one is probably in the top 5 of the worst. And as I always tell people who say that these stories turned them off of trying out tabletop RPGs, I always make sure to let them know that stories like these are just outliers in a hobby that has mostly good people. While it sucks that you had to be part of one of those outliers, chances are the next group you find when you are willing to give D&D another shot will likely be miles above what you experienced with this joke of a DM. So don't give up on a hobby that you love just because of one asshat. Seriously, this DM was god tier cringe. Let's move on. And as it's Friday, it's time to cap off the week with some wholesomeness in the form of a D&D glory story. I made a guest appearance in my old group's game from Australia and had the best D&D experience. By Reddit user, Many Myths. I'm from the UK originally and used to DM for a fantastic group of players. Their roleplay was unmatched in any group I've played with, and they always gave everything to their characters. After running a campaign for a year, I ended up having to cut it short to go traveling in Australia, and the time differences meant that I wasn't able to continue playing with the group. Cut to 9 months later, and one of the players messaged me, telling me that he'd decided to DM for the group on Roll20 and Discord, and asked if I wanted to help him workshop a BBEG, and eventually, to play him in a huge encounter. We spent months going back and forth on the character, and crucially, how to best surprise the group. We decided that I would sit in on the Discord chat as a fake music bot and reveal myself at the opportune moment with a monologue from the shadows. The players absolutely lost their minds when I showed up, and when they realized that I'd be the antagonist of the fight. We proceeded to spend 5 hours in a grueling boss fight in which I perma-killed one of the player characters. It was accidental, but incredibly dramatic. Legendary actions made the whole thing feel like an insanely difficult fight. My legendary resistance shrugged off their big hitting and tactical spells, and you could tangibly feel the frustration, in character, coming out in their changing tactics and switch to melee. The final blow was dealt by the BBEG's grandson, who not only critted, but rolled full damage on every damage die, which I've never seen happen before. It was a hugely satisfying and hugely poetic ending to a really difficult fight, and, true to form, the group's roleplay was astounding. It's definitely bittersweet that I'm no longer able to play with or DM for the group, but this experience was probably my favorite D&D session to date. Man, I can just imagine how excited the players were. Not only are you able to play with your friend that you haven't with in the longest time, but he's going to be piloting a huge enemy. And the whole thing about OP being disguised as a music bot in the Discord channel is really clever. I just love hearing stories like this. It just shows the kind of real-life magic that games like D&D can provide. Hopefully, OP will eventually be able to rejoin his friends as a regular at some point. But that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may you all have a fantastic day. Until next time.